Well, thanks again. So for inviting me, I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's always fun for me to be able to share a little bit about franchising, and especially to those who are looking or considering it, because there's a lot to consider. So I'll go ahead and start with my background. I shared a little bit with you guys before we started, but I am with FranNet, and I am a franchise specialist, and I've been doing this since 2015. I started my business, my marketing and advertising consulting firm, in 2010. And previous to that, I spent my career in sales, mostly in radio. So I worked at radio stations. In Houston, I spent the bulk of my time at KRVE, and then I was also at Radio One. So I worked at my last radio job was working at 97.9 The Box, helping clients figure out how to market to our audience. Many of my clients were franchise companies, so I always had my dream of owning my own business. And so, I decided to take the leap in 2010. Not a great time. It was after the bust, of 2008, 2009. So 2010 was still not, things weren't great. But there's really, I realize there's never a perfect time to start. So today we're going to talk about, really how to go about looking and finding for a franchise business, looking at the different ways that you can go into business ownership, your options, risks and rewards, myths and facts about franchising, how to find the best option for you, and then building your ideal business model. So a little bit about FranNet, for those of you who aren't aware. We are over 30, it's like 34 now, year-old consulting firm. We have offices and consultants, local consultants like myself, all over the United States and in Europe as well. We also have national partnerships with federal agencies that are supported by the government, SCORE, and the SBDC. These are great organizations for anyone who is looking to start a business. They provide free consulting, and you've got a great person at the church, Chris King, who was a wonderful advisor for many years. They really do provide some wonderful services and at no charge. Our services are also free. So we work with people who are looking to find a franchise, help them find one that's the right fit. If any of our clients decide to buy and sign an agreement with a franchise, the franchisor pays us. So we're like a headhunter. That's why they pay us. We take our clients through a process. We are going to make sure that we educate our clients on what the best opportunities are for business ownership, really sitting down and getting to know our clients, understanding their goals, their skills, not just their immediate goals, but 5, 10, 20 years down the line. What do they want their lifestyle to look like? We also pre-screen the franchise companies that we would recommend to any of our clients. We've already done a very thorough vetting, but we also help our clients through the due diligence process. We provide questions to ask along the way. We make sure that when they make a decision, whether it's yes or no, it is a educated, informed decision, and not just based on an emotional attraction to the business. We don't sell franchises. I'm not a business broker. We are a consultant. So this is, I'm getting some feedback. So this is something, are y'all getting feedback, or is it just me? Okay, that's better. So this is just a copy of something that when we work with our clients, we provide. It's a client bill of rights. It really just breaks down your expectation of when you work with us at FranNet, being very clear what you can expect, the coaching.
I'm not pressing you to talk.
That we provide. So we'll go ahead and start. For those of you who are not business owners, I always like to kind of start with, how would your life be different, or better if you were the owner of a successful business? Many of our clients, when we work with them, they come to us for various reasons. Either, they've been working for many years for a company and, spending, nights and weekends, missing family events, building another person's business. And now they want to grow and scale something for themselves. We have people that I've worked with, a good percentage of people who have been laid off. That seems to be a time of transition for people, and now they're ready for something else, something where they can have more flexibility, maybe something where they feel very much more secure, no more layoffs. I've had clients tell me that. So there are different reasons why people decide to go into business ownership, and you can probably look at this, those of you that are on here, and really pick out some that really stand out. For me, it was about I wanted to have more flexibility and control. So while I was in sales, I had flexibility for the most part, but I had a lot of events that I would need to do in the evenings or on the weekends, making sure that my clients' promotions and events went well. Overseeing the staff, making sure everything was going smoothly. But my manager, when on Monday morning or the next day of the week, if I was out in the evening, I had to be there at 8:30 every morning, regardless. They had really strict requirements on when they wanted us in the office, and so I just got tired of having a boss. And also, there were situations where the management could take accounts, so I could grow and build an account, a client, and if they wanted to bring over a new salesperson, because we were 100% commission, they could easily take that, because the radio station owned the accounts. And so I just really got tired of that. So it's different for everybody. I don't know if we have time, but we can talk about, maybe what's driving some of you on this call, on this webinar today, to consider business ownership. Still, even though there's lots of wonderful things for, with regard to being a business owner, generally people tend to continue to want to work for someone else. And the reasons why is, a job seems safer than a business. So we think it's much riskier. People think, okay, COVID right now, not a good time to start a business. But really, when I look back at all my years, I don't think there was ever a time where I was like, okay, yes, this is it. It really became more of, just a leap in faith. And then money, we think it takes a lot of money to start and run a business. And, I don't know how many of you watch Shark Tank, but I'm always so amazed at people who come up with these, great ideas and are willing to put everything on the line. But what if you don't have that great idea? Something that you can, go out and start tomorrow. Skills. People, when I first started my business, I got that a lot, where people would say, I don't have that entrepreneur characteristic. And so, people think it takes some special talent or skill. But generally speaking, most people, if they knew that they were going to be successful in their own business, they would take the leap. So really it boils down to fear. Fear oftentimes keeps us from doing those things that we really want to do. So, when we look at, I always like to kind of put things in perspective. If you think about a job is safer at the beginning. But I work with people every day, and, they were really good at what they did. They were laid off for a reason, not having to do with their job performance. And so now they're faced with, okay, how am I going to meet my financial goals into retirement? If you look at the risk over time of a job, the longer you have the job, the riskier it becomes. Now, that doesn't make sense, but when I go around and I'm talking to people at outplacement firms, or I do talks at job ministries, they're people, and they're there to support people who are laid off. And the people that we're seeing are not the people starting their career. So the longer you have, the riskier it becomes. People don't really think about jobs in that sense. And now if you look at a business, now, it is riskier at the beginning, there's no question. But the longer you have it, the safer it becomes. No one can take it away from you. You can't be downsized, transferred, or fired. You can grow the business at the pace you want. I've had clients who start a business and, maybe the first couple of years, they're not 100% involved in the business. And then later on, they decide, okay, I'm going to jump in, all in, and grow it at, whatever pace they're wanting to. But the longer you have your business, the safer it becomes. In my business, both of my businesses, I had a marketing company. I just didn't accept I guess it was not 20. It's so the years are blurred because of COVID, but it was 2020. I didn't renew my last client that I had in my marketing business. But what I noticed is over the years, I would get calls from referrals, my clients going, I was talking to so-and-so and they said that you helped them do this or you helped them do that. So, the longer I was in the business, the more I built a reputation, and the easier it became to acquire clients to, I didn't have to market as much. So that's something to kind of compare and contrast that risk perception that we have of a business. So, today we're seeing, we have been how jobs aren't as secure, and people are no longer staying at their jobs, 30 years like they used to. There's a lot more volatility in the job market. There's not as much job security. So what we're going to talk about from this point, moving on, is really thinking about franchising, and for one, but really thinking through risk reduction and how do you go about finding those businesses that are safer through all economic conditions. So what we see in franchising, we've got so many great sectors that are covered, and we're seeing that they're not only recession resistant, but also we're seeing a lot that are thriving during a pandemic. So some of the areas where we see great businesses in franchising, senior care, have clients that have opened senior care businesses that are, have grown every single year. And I've, have many conversations with them, and there's a lot of business out there. There's a lot of competition, but there's so much demand. Great sector for the right people. It takes certain skills to be able to do that business, but it's a really solid sector. And then residential repairs, home modifications, those are booming, even through COVID. So, those are needs. We have, if you think about the demographics, so the Gen X and Ys of the world, they don't really, they've grown up in a world where we pay for those services. We're double incomes, no time. So we exchange money for time. So those are really solid businesses for the right people. Cleaning services, whether it's, commercial or residential or both. And Pastor Daniel, you were talking about the cleaning and what you guys are doing to prepare for church, having everybody there and sanitizing the church. Well, there are cleaning services that are booming in that area that have been through COVID, being able to provide those types of services for sterilization and making sure that people are safe. Going into businesses. So, we've seen some really great success stories in the cleaning services, and that is something that has grown over the years in different demographics. Back when I was growing up, it wasn't a thing. You didn't pay to have somebody. Well, I certainly didn't live in the area where you paid to have somebody come and clean your house. So, but now it seems to be much more of a not as much of a luxury for a lot of people. So it's a really good business for somebody who knows how to manage lots of people. It's a Monday through Friday business. So really interesting franchises in that sector. So essential services, automotive. We live in Houston. You got to have a car. There was a dip in automotive because of COVID. People weren't driving as much, but still, they're definitely. I think they had a couple of months where things really slowed down, and then they went back to pretty steady in the automotive sector. So good franchise companies there. Damage restoration, that's great no matter when, especially in Houston. We have so many events that happen. But damage restoration companies are those companies who come in after there's a fire, flood, or any type of an event. I mean, we recently had the freeze, and where water comes into the home and creates lots of damage. And damage restoration companies those can be wonderful businesses for the right people. Most of that business is paid for by insurance companies. Sign companies, businesses need to advertise. Commercial cleaning, I touched on that. Then there's business to business. So there's businesses that help with sales coaching, with profitability, marketing. There's just so many different sectors in franchising where you can go and see businesses that no matter what the economy is doing are thriving. And those are things that you want to look at. So we're going to talk about how to go about buying a business, whether it's starting from scratch if you do have a great idea, or buying a franchise. So let's look at starting a business from scratch, which I did. So the advantages are you have total control. You're making all the decisions. There's room for creativity. You want to add a new product or a service, you can. You don't have to ask anybody. No predetermined rules. Can be a large upside. If any of you watch Shark Tank, you can see that happens. Some interesting success stories there, and you can build a business from your passion. So the disadvantages are, and I would really almost put all of the advantages and the disadvantages depending on the scenario. But as a business owner, you really got to be good at creating systems. Because if you don't have systems, then you will be the systems. And it's very difficult to grow and scale a business if you have to be involved in every aspect of the business. So creating systems, limited financial options to start something from scratch. Chris, you worked at the SBDC, about, the banks and what they're looking for. The SBA, very difficult to get money from a bank. With a startup, slow ramp up. When I started my business, I quit my job. I didn't walk away with clients, which a lot of people did in my industry, but I started with zero, and I had to come up with my website, my company name, a logo, creating the website, creating content for it, marketing pieces. So there was a lot that I needed to develop and create before I ever could get my first client. And they have the highest failure rate. I think the latest thing I saw was it's like 50% of businesses after 5 years are no longer in business. So buying a franchise. So the advantages are you've got that name recognition, licensed trademark, you have proven business systems. That's why you buy into a franchise. There is training and support from the beginning. The day that you sign an agreement, you're going to training. They will either come into the market in addition to provide online training and support. There's a lower failure rate in franchising. I think that same statistic said it was like 85% of franchise companies were still open after 5 years. So as compared to 50% startup. So lower failure rate, lower cost, financing options are there, obviously, because of that success rate is stronger. There are different options that I'll hit on later. And then there's something called the disclosure document. There's the franchise industry is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. So because of that, the government requires something that we call that's called the FDD, franchise disclosure document. We're going to hit more on that and kind of dig into that a little bit, but that is a huge advantage. that you can really get to know a franchise before you sign an agreement. And then you're buying into a franchise family. That is something that I can say when I first started my business, I didn't really see value in until you start a business. It's really hard to appreciate that. But having people that are in business with you in the same business at different places, maybe they've been in business longer, people that you can just pick up the phone and call and ask, different challenges, get advice. I mean, there's just so much value in that, having that support. Now, the disadvantages are you really are limited as far as options, industry options. I mean, there are a lot of options, but franchising needs to be simple. It needs to be a easily duplicated business model. So everything's not covered in franchising. There's structured operating systems. In some, it's extremely structured, and that doesn't work well for everybody. Some people have, the maybe more personality to want to put their own spin on things. In franchising, you've got to understand what their operating system is and make sure that you fit into that. Now, some franchises aren't as structured. So, for example, FranNet is a franchise, and we have, flexibility in how we want to go out and build our business. And but they do provide, structure that we have to stay within. But there's a lot less rigidity in the business, and so that's something to take into account when you're looking at businesses. There's territory restrictions. When you buy a franchise, you buy a certain part of town. So you're going to buy zip codes or an area of Houston. And that is, you're restricted to do business in that area. You can only sell their products or the services that they're providing. And then there's ongoing royalty payments as long as you're a franchisee. And royalties are a percentage of gross sales. And, it varies between, I've seen 5 to 10%. So those are some of the key points on buying a franchise. I don't know if there's any questions coming in or who's monitoring the questions, but if there are, I'm happy to take them. Or I guess we're going to do them at the end. I believe that's what we talked about.
Cynthia, I had 1 or 2 questions earlier, and that was the couple of slides back. I was going to ask you the difference in the cost of entering those various industry businesses that you spoke about. That was a couple of slides back. I didn't know if you were going to cover that moving forward.
Yeah, costs. We'll talk a little bit about that too, but just to kind of hit on that a little bit, the industry, it's what drives the cost is the method for going out and getting clients. Now, if you have a retail location, that is one way that you can go into business, where you buy a business that needs a physical space, a building with maybe high traffic, high volume, lots of visibility. When you look at that business model where it requires a physical location, that's going to be a much higher expense, because you need to get a lease. If you've never rented before, you're probably going to have to pay a lot more money to lease. There's a build out, there are employees, there's a much bigger capital expenditure before you ever open your business. So when you look at any business, it really is driven not as much by the sector. Maybe in some cases, food, you're generally going to operate, even though that's changing, but you're generally going to operate out of a physical high volume location. So it's more driven by that, but we're going to talk a little bit about that. I don't know if that helps you at all, but
absolutely, thank
you. But we'll talk more about cost, just to kind of, because I know that's a big question mark for many people. So a franchise is basically you're paying for the license to use a name, trademark, products, business systems, all of that, in exchange for the initial franchise fee. So I have oftentimes people tell me, oh, I saw a coffee shop and it's only $50,000. And I'm like, no way, you're opening a coffee shop for $50,000. So, you're paying a couple of things. You're paying that initial franchise fee of a certain amount. and that varies. You're paying ongoing royalties, but you're also paying to open the business, whatever that business requires. So, but that's one thing to keep in mind when you're looking at franchises, that you have right out of the gate, you're going to pay the initial franchise fee. You're going to always be paying royalties of some kind, but you're also going to pay to buy those systems, whatever it is that you need to operate your business. So a franchise is basically the creation of a distribution channel. That's what it is, to build brand identity quickly and attain market dominance fast. So what you see oftentimes, you'll see like one place pop up, and then all of a sudden you're driving around and you're like, oh, there's another one. Oh, there's another one. So that's what a franchise does. It creates the model. It creates a model. It builds a brand, but it builds it quickly through other people and other people's investments. So you have the franchise headquarters. So FranNet's headquarters is in Louisville, Kentucky. We have about 20 people there that support the franchise operators, who then the franchise operators support the customers. So we hit on this earlier. The franchise disclosure document is required by the government to submit it every year. This is a document that has to be provided and updated every year. So if there's any changes there, there's a record of that. So the information that you're going to find, and this is pretty boilerplate information, you're going to find the information on how long they've been in business, who's managing this, and what's their background, what's their experience. Also, if they have any personal bankruptcies, which I think is really important. So if any of the management or the founders, whoever's involved in the business, has personal bankruptcy, that has to be disclosed. Any litigation against the franchise. So if a franchise has been sued by a franchisee, by anybody, it's going to be disclosed. You're going to see some general information on that. And then costs. That's why I'm always surprised when I talk to people at a franchise show, and they'll tell me about the franchise was 50,000, and come to find out it's 300,000. I'm thinking, you did not read the franchise disclosure document, because in the document, it will break down the costs. So you'll see the total investment, and the total investment includes everything that we talked about earlier, the franchise fee, how much you're going to be paying. Well, it doesn't necessarily, it gives an estimate of how much you're going to be paying in franchise fees. If there's any vehicles that you need, marketing, supplies, insurance, employees, all of that's going to be included in that. It's a range. You're going to see a range from this much to this much. So you should have a good idea of what it takes to get into business, to open your business. Plus, it'll show 2 to 3 months of working capital. So everything should be detailed in the franchise disclosure document. Not enough for you to make a decision on whether a franchise is profitable or not, but it is definitely a good place to start. And then if you work with like the SBDC, you can build a business plan off using that to kind of create different scenarios. You'll see the working capital that's needed, the royalties, whether some royalties are paid on a weekly basis, some are monthly, some are they go up or they go down depending on a sales threshold. If you go to this much in sales, then they're going to go to this or that. All of that's going to be very detailed in this agreement. You'll see the franchise contract in there as well. Now, you'll also see how the franchisor is going to support you and train you. And you'll see anything that's required of the franchisor to the franchisee. So for example, maybe they require you to grow your sales 10% a year. Whatever it is, it will be clearly stated in this agreement. The territory, it will be defined. It'll show you how it's going to be protected. There's going to be listing and contact information for current franchisees and past franchisees. And this is a really important part of the due diligence when we're working with clients, and we'll hit on that a little bit more. But you in the process of discovery, whether or not a franchise that you're looking at, when you go through the due diligence, there's going to be a time when you can actually pick up the phone and talk to franchisees and ask them questions. the what's really helpful in that process is that the franchisees can share financial information, their financial information, that the franchisor can't share. Legally, the franchisor can't share how much money franchisees are making. They can provide averages, but it's going to be all everybody bulked in together. So that can be a really important time for my clients when we're going through the due diligence. Generally, that's when they decide, becomes very clear, yes, this is right for me, or no, it's not right for me. So something that's really helpful in finding a franchise is that you can actually go pretty deep into the research by talking to franchisees, and you can talk to past franchisees. I tell my clients to do that as well. It can be a little harder to find them sometimes, I found, but you can actually get on the phone and talk to franchisees that have closed their doors and get to know why, what was the reason for that. Earnings claims, like I said, it's going to be very general on the franchisees. Financial statements for the franchisor, you want to know how healthy that franchise company is. And so I think that's a very helpful information. You can see, how financially stable is this franchise? How much money do they have to grow the franchise? Manager policy, if a franchise requires employees, you can see that. How you can sell this business. Is it transferable to a family? It's all very detailed in here. So the FDD is really helpful. So talking to current and past franchisees, a lot of people ask me, will a franchise really share this information with me? And that I have seen over and over again, franchisees were in your shoes. They were once wondering whether this franchise made sense or not. And, they're part of the team. And so they want to make sure that whoever's looking is someone that's going to be a good fit, and someone who knows what they're getting into. So it's actually a really helpful piece of the puzzle in determining whether a franchise makes sense or not. But I have found that, for other franchisees will share with my clients, I'll even send them a spreadsheet with line items of expenses that they have, so that they can start building the performance to make a determination whether it's something that would be financially viable or not. One question I tell my clients to ask always is, would you do this all over again? And if they say no, well, then yeah, that's not a good fit, right? That's not a good sign. There must be reasons for that. So now we'll talk about myths and facts in franchising, and I had many of these. I believed many of the myths. So franchising is only fast food and retail. Everybody thinks when they know what I do, they automatically think food, right, or retail locations. And as you know, and we hit on it earlier, there's so many different categories of businesses in franchising. So there's over 3,600 different franchise companies out there in so many different sectors. So people think that the franchises succeed because of the quality of the product. All right, who thinks yes or no to this one? Anyone want to share?
Who maybe?
A maybe? Is there a maybe? Well, the answer is no. If you think about it, here's my example. Can you make a better burger than the McDonald's burger? Everybody can. Can you make a better salad? Those salads are ridiculous. So if it's not the product, it's not the food or the product, what is it? What makes them successful? What makes franchises successful? It's everything else. It's about the business systems. It's a marketing, acquiring clients, the sales, operations, accounting. There are so many factors that are critical in success that make it very difficult for mom and pops sometimes. So franchises have figured it out. They have the playbook. I'm sure everybody on this call can think of an example, and I have a couple of examples where and they're more food, but the food was excellent. Yeah, and they weren't able to keep their doors open. So there's so much more that comes into play in success for business ownership. And that's what a franchise has, hopefully, that's what you want to see. They figure that out. So there are low-cost franchise opportunities out there. That one, oh, okay. So this one, this is going to hit on Pastor Daniel, what you were kind of maybe wanting to see a little bit on how much money do franchises cost. And this is the latest information. They update it like every 4 years. It doesn't, so this is the latest 2019. I guess it doesn't change that much. But of the franchises that are out there, you can see the breakout of initial investment. Now, initial investment includes what I talked about earlier, which is everything that you need to open your doors plus 3 months of working capital. Okay, so most of our clients are buying businesses, service type businesses in the 50 to 150 range. People aren't necessarily thinking about that, because when you think franchise, you think McDonald's, right? And or these other food franchises that are at least, you know, $400,000 or $500,000 to open. So there's a lot of great businesses out there that are in the the lower cost range. So when people see the numbers of how much franchises cost, they automatically go to, okay, well, you know, how can I go about maybe financing a business like this? Obviously, there's personal savings. You can go into a partnership, which I tend to try to guide my people away from, but it happens sometimes. You can, right now, many people are using their equity in their home to fund a business. It's actually the cheapest way right now. It's better and quicker than an SBA, because SBA is just becoming very, very difficult right now because of the time it takes, and they are requiring more cash to have available. So your home can be a way to finance a business. Seller financing, yeah, if you're buying a new business, you can, you know, they might fund it for you. And then the 401k and IRA, that's one way that many people aren't aware of. You can actually tap into that money tax-free and penalty-free to buy a business, to pay yourself a salary for the first year. That's something we don't do at FranNet, but we definitely have some great companies that we can recommend you to if you're interested in that. And many people do use that. They look at that money as, okay, I'm going to invest in myself. And can my business make a return of more than 10%? Then it can actually make sense. Okay, so you don't need industry experience. That is true, you don't. Franchise companies, they have already developed the systems, but they do want you to have other skills. They want to focus on what skills do you have in order to fit in with what we're looking for the owner, the franchise owner to do. They want you to come with different skills, and every franchise is different. Some are looking for people who have managed people, who have great management skills. Some are looking for P&L experience, managing the financials, good communication, maybe good skills, sales ability. They're looking for different things because it depends on what that role of the owner is. The franchise already has those proven processes, and they are going to teach and train you how to use them. They're going to teach and train you how to use their systems, how to go about finding clients. They've already developed that. So the key is really knowing what skills you have to transfer into whatever business or franchise you're looking for. Why pay royalties? I had a problem with this. That's why I started my marketing business instead of starting a franchise, because the idea of paying royalties, I don't know, just bugged me. But I've learned a lot since. Royalties are kind of like taxes, it's a percentage of your sales. So for the percentage of your income in franchising, you're paying a percentage of sales that's going to the franchisor. So the franchisee is really at the beginning, you're exchanging some profits in the long term. So like, for example, I talked to a client of mine who has a senior care business, and he's been in the business for 4 years, and they're doing phenomenally well. And so I'm always asking the same questions every time I talk to my clients. How's the support? How's this? How's that? And he said, probably the number one thing value for him is are the other franchisees, that he could do this business on his own now. But there is value enough for him to continue to pay those royalties. There is support. There are other things that the franchisor does in exchange for those royalties. But certainly, knowing what he knows now, he could probably start the business on his own. But so you're exchanging in the long term. You're at the beginning, you're paying those royalties so that you can have somebody teach and train you how to do this business. And the longer you have a business, you may be able to do the business on your own, but there are some value. There is value in paying those royalties. And that's something that you're gonna, as you go through researching a franchise, you want to ask those franchisees, how much are you paying? Are you comfortable? Do you feel like it's a value? Do you get value for those royalties that you're paying in the way of support? So good franchise companies lose money in the short term. They're spending a lot of time with you at the beginning to make sure they teach and train you well. They know that if they do that, they teach and train you well, that eventually you're gonna know what you're doing, and they're not gonna have to spend as much time with you. And so that's where franchise companies make money. They make a little bit from everybody. So franchising is, you're paying for their experience. You're wanting something simple. Simplicity is key. The training and support is there, ongoing, name recognition, sales, marketing, operational systems, and you have that culture of teamwork. So really, you're in business for yourself, but you're not by yourself. I think that's really a good place to be for many people who are coming out of a corporate job or are used to being an employee, to be able to be in business for yourself and not by yourself. You have that support system. There's a lot of value in that. So there's so many different franchises out there. There's some that have where you need to have many franchise units to be able to make a decent amount of money. There's some that you can have one territory and grow and scale a very large business. There's some franchise units that have thousands of franchisees, and some that are newer, well-established ones and newer ones. We work with both. There's a lot of good companies that are newer. There are some that are very structured, some that are more flexible, some that are expensive, some that are are less expensive. Something I always tell my clients is there's not an automatic correlation between how much you spend on a franchise. People think, oh, if I spend a lot, I'm going to make a lot more, and that's not necessarily true in terms of that potential return. I have lots of clients who have started service businesses, and I just talked to one the other day. He's doing an insulation business, and he said he last month they grossed, of course this was after the freeze, so people did have a lot of broken pipes, but they had to get new insulation, but he grossed $75,000 a month, and he hasn't been in business for a year. He started last year in, I think it was April, somewhere in that time frame. It was right in the heat of COVID. So that's hard to do when you have been able, when you're spending on a brick and mortar location, because the costs are a lot more. So he started with just a truck and a technician going out and doing the work. So I always tell people, you want to be aware of statistics. I need to make sure I'm not going over my time here. Oops. we're getting close. You want to be aware of statistics. There's a lot of information out there. So you want to be careful when you look at those statistics, because, there's some, big franchises out there that have had maybe fewer failures, but that's because they're able to sell those. So some franchise companies don't show that they've had any failures, but that doesn't mean that they haven't. That means that maybe they've transferred that location, that franchisee, they've sold it to another franchisee in the system or outside of the system, so it doesn't show as a failure. So you really need to dig in. That's really what I want to hit on here. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the key is doing your due diligence. So I talked about this. You're in business for yourself. You're not by yourself. One thing that I think is critically important is, as you're going through and finding that perfect fit, you have to think about, what is your role? What is the role of the business owner? And am I willing to follow that system? Am I willing to do that, whatever those items are, or those tactics that they need for you to be spending your time in? Am I comfortable with that? Is it affordable? I work with people all the time figuring out, does it make sense? And I many times tell people, it doesn't really make sense right now. You've got to be able to not only buy the business, but take care of your household for a year as you grow and scale the business. Have enough working capital to support the business. Those are really important areas to focus on. The affordability. Is a risk level acceptable? Like I said before, there are franchises that really have a solid track record and are in an area where there's definite demand, and they can grow and scale pretty strongly, even during a downturn, even during a pandemic, which is surprising. Are you going to enjoy it? Is this going to fit you? Is this going to fit your lifestyle? Really thinking about that, making sure that the lifestyle fits you. I talk to people about that all the time. I have a client that I'm working with right now. His wife is like, he doesn't operate well after 5 o'clock. That's when he cuts off. So, good to know. He wouldn't be good to have at maybe a senior care business or a restoration business, because those are businesses that operate after hours, right? So making sure you'll enjoy it. So important. So one of the things that we do at FranNet is we help you. We help clients that want to figure out what makes sense, because it is daunting. There's so many businesses out there. So we have a process that we take our clients through, and it starts with an assessment. We call it the readiness assessment, and it feels like a personality test. I'm going to give you guys the link. It'll show up on my screen here, but there's no, if you take it, you're not obligated. You can take it just for fun. I don't mind. But what it does is it measures your values, your motives, what drives you, understanding your core competencies. Once you do the assessment, it's online, takes about 30 minutes. There's also an area for financials, because that's another piece of the matching process. So I help clients figure out financially what franchise companies, what investment levels they can afford, and really thinking through that. Every franchise company has a minimum net worth and liquidity that they're going to require. So that is part of what we match with. But truly understanding, what are your core values? What drives you? That's what the assessment helps with. We also talk about, when I meet with clients after taking the assessment, we schedule a consultation talking through how many employees do you want? Have you managed people? What type of employees have you managed? What's your comfort level with that? What's your budget, not just for buying the business, but also taking care of your household as you grow and scale that business? What business environment are you wanting? Do you want to, are you the type of person that wants to, wear a business suit to go to work, or go to an office, or where do you want your business to take place? The environment that you're comfortable with. Are you wanting a full engagement where you're working full time in the business, or do you want something more semi-absentee? There are businesses out there that are more part-time, where you're actually hiring a manager to handle the day-to-day. Those businesses are generally more of the brick and mortar, and they do cost more, but that's an option for those people who are looking for that. What hours are you wanting? What's your ideal business hours? Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, whatever it is, we talk through that. Because sometimes people think they get very attracted to a business because they like it as a consumer, but they're not really thinking through what is the role of the business owner, what is the lifestyle I'm going to be leading. Those are the things that are key. We talk about the types of customers. Do you want business to business? I have a client that I've shown him several things, and he finally came to the conclusion that, you know, he really, his career has been business to business. He doesn't really want to deal with the consumer. So fine, that's fine. There's no right or wrong. It's really establishing what is that perfect business. And then after we go through all of these things, then I'm ready to go and show you concepts. I'll go out and find those businesses. But we're also going to talk about what skills do you have in your jobs that you really enjoy doing, and what comes naturally. So, you know, for some franchise companies, they want people who are great marketers. That's good salespeople, people who are comfortable going out and networking and talking to people and finding referral partners, maybe going to schools and you know, figuring out how to get in there so that their business can provide a service or a product. So every franchise is different, but it's really about understanding you. Where do you excel? Where do you shine? Are you comfortable in that sales and marketing piece? Are you creative? Do you enjoy that? Are you good at operations? Are you good at project management? Project management is really important for many franchise companies. Have you managed people? Are you good at managing others, managing yourself and your time? You know, are you good at problem solving, dealing with customers and taking care of problems? Does that excite you? You know, there's not a right or wrong. It really is about understanding you. Are you good at the financial management? Are you an accountant? Have you managed a profit and loss statement? Can you read a profit and loss statement? You know, some franchises are very specific. We need that because this business has big equipment that requires depreciation. In order to make it a profitable business, you have to know that. So these are things that we're going to look at. And I always tell people, you want to think through, write down, what are you good at? And making sure that fits what the role of that business owner is going to be, what they want that business owner to do. So you want to determine, you know, your skills, your financial goals, your lifestyle goals. We talk about that. What do you want in year 1, year 5, 10, 20 years from now? Every business is different. I have clients that come to me and tell me, you know, I tell people a business is not a short-term endeavor. You got to look at this as 5 years. You know, you're going to commit 5 years to this. And you could have the goal that in 5 years you want to sell your business. And if that's the case, then by year 2 and 3, you got to start preparing, you know, really year 3, you want to prepare your business for sale. So think through that. Where do you want this business to take you? There are people that I work with that tell me, I want this business as a legacy business for my family. I want my kids to take it over. Okay, great. Good to know. There are some businesses that are better for that than others. Generally, those are businesses like that are sometimes retail businesses are better for that. Or if you want to sell a business, we want to know that. We want to talk through that. Do you want to sell your business in 10 years? So really understanding you. And that's something for you guys to think through too, as you're starting this process of figuring out if a franchise, you know, what would be a good fit for you. So here's some businesses, some advisors that I always recommend in the process when I'm working with people. At some point, you're going to need to enlist a franchise attorney to review the agreement. Every one of my clients, I mean, there's a few that have decided that they didn't want to spend the money, and I mean a few, and I've worked with a lot. I'd say 2. But my recommendation and my advice is always, you want a franchise attorney to review your agreement. Not that they're necessarily going to make big changes to it. There's usually some changes, little ones that might happen, but the key is that you know what you're signing. You know what you're getting into. I've never had anybody tell me, oh, I wish I wouldn't have spent the money for an attorney review. Never. This is an agreement that is binding for a 5-10 year time span. And so you want to know how do I get out of this? You know, what's the what ifs? You want to know those. Who knew now, for example, COVID and what was in these franchise agreements for COVID if people wanted to get out. There's a lot of information out there, but an attorney is going to help you know beforehand. An accountant, but accountant that works with franchisees is so important. I have many clients that I will talk to and think, okay, this makes sense for you now to go and talk to an accountant to understand the financials a little bit better. And so books that are great, E-Myth Revisited is so important for any business owner, franchise or not. Really hyper focuses on the processes and the systems for growing and scaling a business. And then Street Smart Franchising is an excellent book as well. It helps you go through the due diligence and make sure you do a very thorough job on that. So here is my link. If you have a phone, you can point your camera at the QR code, and you can fill out the information, and I can send you the PFA if you'd like. But there is the right here, that FranNet.com, C Mora CQ. That is the link that if you put it in your browser, it'll take you directly to the PFA, and you can fill that out. Once you fill that out, I get the results, and I will send them to you, and we can go over them and discuss whether or not, you know, franchising makes sense or not, and if our services would be of value. So that's what I have. I talked a lot. Any questions at this point, if we have time? Do we have time? Oh, I went over a little, sorry.
No, we sure do have time. My question is, in 2020, that being a pandemic year, did you see a lot of franchises open during the 2020 year? And if so, in what industry were they in?
Oh, honestly, that was my best year. It was incredible. And I think probably the reason for that, it might have been more because people were working from home. So I had more people buy businesses that were actually working and employed, because they could have these calls and do the research while they were at home and nobody was looking. Some of the businesses, let me think, I had pet franchises, grooming. It's called Pet Bar was the name of the franchise. We had several clients buy into that. And that's a newer franchise, but you know, people during the pandemic were staying at home with their dogs. And so I guess they, you know, the need for grooming your pet did not go away with the pandemic. The other thing I think it did was it certainly had people going out and getting dogs more than ever before. So there's been a lot of growth in that sector. The other thing I think I mentioned the insulation business, window coverings, offsite storage. I think who else? Home repair, some home repair businesses, and they're all doing well. It's really cool to see. Pool service business bought, and actually just opened this year, but bought in 2020. So yeah, so I mean, and I stay in touch with my clients. I'm staying, you know, kind of checking in on them to make sure that just hearing kind of their experience, and you know, it seems to be, I do have a couple of some retail clients that definitely felt the pandemic last year, but luckily several of the clients, the hair care, fitness, they were able to benefit from the PPP loan. Thank God for that, because I think it would have been a different experience. But but most of the businesses last year were service type businesses. I had one person do something called Stretch Lab. That was the one retail, and the pet bar is also retail.
Wow, that is very interesting. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that presentation. We're going to leave the floor open in case anyone else have questions. But right now, what I like to do is transition to another person that's on the call. She happens to be a church member. Her name is Miss Rand, and we have done a lot of work. She's done a lot of work for the church as well, and we really appreciate Sherry's involvement. And she is one of the people that has taken a step and invested in a franchise. So at this time, I want to take about 10, 15 minutes and just talk to us about her experience of investing in a franchise and taking over a franchise business. Sherry?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Deacon, our Elder Daniel. I appreciate it. So, I got into franchising. I was in corporate America, I think, 17 years at the time. And my division, I work for Dow Chemical. I'm a chemical engineer by trade, and I have an MBA. And so our division was sold to another company. And about a year and a half into that, I was laid off and decided I did not want to go back to corporate America right away. I was traveling quite a bit. At that time, you guys know, the people at the church know my children. They're still somewhat young. And so at the time, I was told about that at the day after my oldest son turned 2, I went to China for 14 days. And so I traveled like that for many years. And so it was actually welcoming to me. And I just said, I'm not going back to corporate America right now. And so I bought a franchise. At the time, it was called Embroid Me. They are going through a rebranding for a number of years. And so many people, so Fully Promoted is actually the new brand name. We have kept the Embroid Me name around, and I still use that, honestly, primarily in my communications, because that's what many of our customers know. I guess I would say, and so we are in our 6th year, and we are still growing and making investments in the business. And so one of the things that I just recently did, and some of you who are on my email list, is that we just moved out of our retail space into an office condo area right off of 249 that they're building. And so that was a part of our growth plan, getting out of a retail space, getting out of paying $3,100 a month in retail rent. That, after 5 years, it's probably almost $200,000 that I walked away, with nothing. And so a part of our growth plan, a part of the personal plan of mine to strengthen the business, or just strengthen the financial position, was to be in a position where when I get ready to sell the business, not if, but when, it will be, I can either sell this to the new owner, I can rent it to the new owner, or if they want to move out and do something else, I can sell it or rent the individual offices, or anything like that. So that was just a part of kind of like step 2. And so I guess I would honestly say is that like Cynthia, you mentioned Shark Tank. I watched that show in amazement, because people who have these ideas and who are truly, they invent all these products. I think that's great. I don't have, people think, maybe I screen printed or I embroidered in my garage. None of that. I do have a sewing machine because I'm short, so I've always learned how to hem my pants. But I did not choose this business because I love making t-shirts. As a matter of fact, the E-Myth is one of my favorite references in books, and I always tell new business owners to read that, because you cannot spend your time, if you want to grow your business, standing behind the machine. So I just think I chose this business because it was a business that I could run. I think in order to be successful as a business owner, you have to have a ton of business acumen. You have to understand what makes you money, what doesn't make you money. I always tell the ladies who work for me, I'm like, we're not going to be here not making money. And so there are a lot of customers who we turn away. I have to explain to them that, and that that's just not something that we do. For example, we do take, much to my chagrin, like one-off one-off orders and small orders. And they're quite expensive, and they're that way because I tell them by the time you touch it and then the embroiderer touches it and all of this happens and we put all these things into it, if we're not making money, we might as well not be doing it. And so I think it's hard for some people to look at that and say that doesn't make us money doing. Um, I like the flexibility. That's one of the things that I love about being an owner. So we're not open on the weekends. We have banker hours. We're open 9:30 to 5 o'clock. And I've heard people, some people comment, "Oh, well, we like running our errands on the weekend." And I just tell them, so do we, right? So I like spending time with my family on the weekend. And to be honest, walk-in customers are not our ideal customer. So we are B2B. We do take one-offs from people if they need embroidery, but our customer, we cater to people who are working during the week, 9 to 5 as well. So that have an ongoing need for apparel purchases for their staff and uniforming their staff. And so, we do think, accounting business, we have HEBs, we have customers like that. And really the sweet spot to get to is that our customers who, again, have an ongoing need, and we don't do setup every time. So that's a time sink that I think most people who walk in off the street don't understand. You start making money when Harris County or somebody calls up and says, "Okay, just do 250 more jackets." And it's the exact same that you did it last time. And you don't have to go through setup. You don't have to go through picking thread. You don't have to go through picking font. And so that's the customer that we cater to. I do like, so, you mentioned royalties. I do pay 6% in royalties every month, and we put 1% in a marketing fund. I absolutely think it's well worth it, just like the taxes that we pay. So, I've got an operations manager. So for example, probably many of my church members don't know because we were not in church. I had surgery in December. And so my operations manager will come in here and help my employees every day if I can't be here, or if I get a new employee, so I don't have to stop doing what I'm doing. She will come and sit with the new employee and talk with them. We've got, monthly sales training. There is a vendor relations manager that works in corporate that negotiates deals with us at various vendors. And so as a part of the franchise, we might get preferred pricing. I get a lot of net terms right off the bat with a lot of the main suppliers that saves you money. So I do think that the royalties that we pay are well worth it. That's the infrastructure. Of course, the infrastructure could always be better. Even the 1% marketing fees that we pay. So we've got a marketing board made up of only franchisees that we elect, and we all put our money into marketing budgets. And so we've done commercials on satellite radio. They will pull all of our money together and create promotional items or self promos that we all use. And so I think that the money that I spend for royalties is well worth it. So and I honestly think that, again, that not only kind of business acumen that you really have to run a business. I think you absolutely kind of have to be a borderline workaholic. I am. I'm here now. I'm usually here all of the time. I work at home, but I really brought that with me from, probably actually my parents, but you kind of have to be a workaholic. You do have to be able to wear a lot of hats and make good business decisions about how to run a business. And, one of the other things that I wrote down, a note from you, Cynthia, is saying that the cost versus the return is not always proportional. So although I'm always in this ongoing search for another good employee, we run our business with myself and two other always full-time people. And so getting into this business, I feel like I can't remember, but I think maybe the franchise fee was $30,000. Maybe it was a little bit more. I can't remember. And maybe $100,000 equipment package, which you don't necessarily have to have. And honestly, different franchisees invested different amounts. Some of them chose not to invest in equipment. Some of them actually don't do all of their work in-house, and they contract it out. So they don't have to keep as many employees. And so there's the lady who runs my machine is always saying, "Oh, you got to get a bigger machine. You got to get a bigger machine." And I tell her, absolutely not. I will contract it out, or either run this one on 2 shifts before I invest in more equipment that then sits idle for 16 hours of the day. So I would do it all over again. I think it's like, having a child or something like that. It's always very painful going through it. But once you kind of come out on the other end, you forget about a lot of that pain and you begin to reap the rewards. And again, for me, it's flexibility, and it's being able to, be my own boss. And, a comment that you made about, regardless of what happened that night, regardless of whether you were on a 10 p.m. call with the folks in China or a 6 a.m. call with the folks in China, people want you in the office from 8:30 to 5:30 and are doing head checks. And I was just tired of that. So, so it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the faint of heart. I will say that during COVID, we were very blessed during COVID. We were able to transition and pivot to a lot of to PPE. We sold a lot of masks, and we actually serviced a lot of service businesses who still needed uniforms and apparel for their workers. So I think it was one Friday during the pandemic that I actually didn't open the doors, and that might have been during that first week that the governor, I guess, kind of shut down everything. But other than that, we were here answering phones,
Wow.
working. So that was our experience. And so we really didn't lose a beat at all in 2020. So that was a blessing. It was a blessing, because I do know that other businesses like mine closed, but it was absolutely a blessing. So that's kind of my story. I am happy that I did it. And I would do it. I would do it again, but it is a lot of work, and you have to be dedicated. Like I said, I think you almost have to be a borderline workaholic, because there is always something else to be done. And I do have an exit plan. My boys do not want embroid me, so they don't want it. And I think maybe another 10 years, but a good piece of advice that I have gotten was that if you think you want to be out in 10 years, make sure you're ready in 5, because just like the pandemic, you just don't know when life is going to change. And I saw somebody who had spent quite a bit of time building their business over probably the past 15 years, that with the pandemic and a medical emergency in their family, she closed abruptly and did not have time to adequately sell her business. And so I think you always got to be ready and be in a financial position and kind of know what your business is worth, and be ready to be able to sell and walk away at any time, regardless of what your plan is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just kind of my story, everybody. So a lot of people at the church are
Wow.
familiar with it.
That is amazing. That is some really, really great information. Hey, we've got a few more minutes. Does anybody have any questions for either Cynthia or for Sherry?
That's an awesome story, Sherry. Awesome testimony.
Thank you, Sister Grace.
Yes. And thank you, Cynthia, for accepting our invitation to come and talk.
Hey, it's an honor. Thank you.
Yes, yes. And I agree with Sherry. Oh, I'm sorry, Sherry.
No, I was just going to add, finish, and then I'll just add one more thing about being a part of a franchise.
Okay. I agree with Sherry about franchise. I had a Popeyes franchise in the airport, and it does have its benefits. You reap all of it. And honestly, if 911 didn't hit and the airport didn't close down, I would still be in there. My plan was to open 4 more, but 911 hit, the airport closed down, and my lawyer had negotiated for me to only be in airports, which would have been a protection at the time, but because we didn't know about 911. So You know, it happens, and I was in a small airport, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. You learn so much from a franchise. There is a lot of upfront costs and working capital, but if you go in with your eyes wide open, even if you are not in it afterwards, you have so much to give to the next business and everything else you do. As you can see with Sherry, you know, you do learn so much, you know, if you go in it ready to learn, ready to work, and apply yourself. So.
I was just going to add that, again, being a part of a franchise, there are probably, I don't know, somewhere between maybe 300 and 400 fully promoted embroidered me. There's probably 6 or 7 around the Houston metro area. And having that network of fellow franchisees, they're in the same position that I am. We call each other all during the week. We are very supportive of each other.
Yeah.
And if I have a piece of equipment to break, I go over there, or somebody's got is without their embroiderer or something. Now you can do contract work, but they're like, oh my gosh, can you do this for me? Or I've somehow ran out of this color, whatever thread, and I got to finish a job, and they'll just come get it. And so having that network, and some franchisees, I know, for example, I have a friend who runs care builders at home, and they are very strict with territory. So even if her mother lived in Pearland, she would not be able to service a client in Pearland. And so we are not like that. Wherever you have clients, if for whatever reason, one of the fellow franchisees is over in Cyprus, if I know someone in Cyprus, or I know the football coach at Cypress Creek High or whatever, and they wanted to give me their business, that will be completely fine. That I say that to say, we are all supportive of each other, and we don't go after each other's business, and we do work for one another. We don't try to pick off each other's business. And so it's we all rely really heavily on each other for support to get through what we need to get through. As a matter of fact, we were all just trading our flight information because we've got an expo coming up in June. And so we really do, we support each other. And so that's one of the things that I have benefited from being a part of the franchise family, is that you get a lot of support and people who will pull you. Now, I'm sure everybody is not that way. Some people are very, protective, and they don't want you doing, they don't want to share who their customers are because of fear. And everybody's not ethical, but we certainly feel like there's enough to go around. And so we really try to support each other when necessary.
Yeah. One thing about the upfront costs I wanted to share is, I've worked with clients who never put a penny into the business out of their pocket. The business funded from day one. The business funded itself from day one.
Wow.
After paying the franchise fee and maybe getting a vehicle. But it just depends on the business. So there are lower cost businesses, but they don't fit everybody. It has to make sense for that individual. And that's why, when people come to me and they maybe, take our assessment and fill that out, are ready for me to tell them, okay, what business? There's so much more that I need to know to match it. The fit is critical. It sounds like, Sherry, you found something that really suits you. And that's a blessing, because there are many people that go into something because, I think I like this business because there's an emotional draw. But when it boils down to it, what their role is as a business owner doesn't really, for them to be successful, doesn't really suit their natural tendencies or skill sets, what they're comfortable doing. And so they don't do well. In any franchise, you can pull whatever franchise out there, you will find that there are franchisees that are very successful and some that are failing and can't keep their doors open, and everything in between. And I warn my clients about that. First of all, you want to talk to them all, not all franchises, but you want to talk to all types, the superstars, the solid business builders, and the people that are struggling. Because what that represents, or what that shows, is that every person is going to run their business differently. And so what you have to go in thinking is how do I fit? Where do I want to be spending my time? And is the superstar similar to me, or am I more like the person that's struggling? Right? Because then it becomes about what do I bring? Not what does a franchisor do, but what do I bring and how do I fit into that? It's not, tell people all the time, you don't want to put a square peg into a round hole. That doesn't work, right? So we want to hyper focus on where are you going to be spending your time? That has to really fit. Do you care about making a difference in the community? Are you somebody who needs to give back, have a give back component? Because if you don't, you're not happy. Well, we need to know that, right? Because there are businesses that have more of that. And then, are you somebody who really, you just care about profitability? You want to build an empire, and that is all that matters. Well, if that's the case, then we're going to look at different businesses. So there's so many variables here, but the fit is so important, so important. And that's why that whole focus on what the business owner does as opposed to what the business does. That's so important, because what you do, you're not doing the embroidering, right? Good. Yeah, you're not the technician. And that's what I tell clients all the time, because they'll come to me. I love seniors. I love old people. I would love to sit with old people and care for them. Okay, well, a senior care isn't a good business for you. Yeah. You can't grow a business sitting with the seniors. Mm-hmm. In a senior care business, you better be really good at HR, because basically what you have in that business is a staffing company. And you have hundreds of people that you have to, keep track of. And yes, you're talking to families, but your business and where you're spending your time is not with the seniors. It's not. So really thinking about that is what I really stress with my clients.
Well, again, Cynthia, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, and everything that you've shared with us. I'm going to make sure that we put your business on our website and share a fabulous testimony. I only wish moving forward, Cynthia, that we could have you come to our brick and mortar church and share with a larger congregation. But we've got to go now. We've got one more minute, and I apologize that I did not open up the session in prayer, but I will certainly close it in prayer. Lord, we thank you so much for these speakers, Cynthia Mora and Sherry Rand. We thank you for the consultant and Chris King for being on this call as well. Lord, we ask you to bless all of the businesses of everyone on this call. Lord, let everything that their hands touch just turn to gold. And at the end of the day, let them give you the glory and the praise for all that you have done in their lives. Keep us safe, watch over us, watch over our pastors and our congregation, watch over our city and our mayor and our state and our government. In Jesus Christ's name we pray, amen. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next month for our insurance seminar.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.